acknowledge and respect the indigenous people within whose traditional lands we are meeting within. Has everyone had a chance to read the agenda, adopt it? Any changes?
Do a mover and second.
Mover and second, Andy and Kelly. Okay. And I guess right now we're
Vote.
sorry,
All in favor?
all in favor? All in favor. Been away for a while.
No worries.
You're a little rusty.
You got her a little early. I was set for 6.
Yeah.
It was.
Took a whole day off. Okay.
Meetings from this point on.
Okay,
6:30.
so we adopted.
I thought it was 6:30 all the
It's
time.
always been 6:30 in Area I.
Everyone received the minutes and chance to go over them.
Yep.
Well, what's the big deal? Or
Whole business.
Okay, so minutes are good.
Plan.
I have, can you just sign the back, which back of the minutes, Andy, since you were the one?
Oh, you didn't get an approved version?
He likes to sign it in person.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
That's okay.
Keep signing those checks.
Like Trump.
Jesus.
No.
that guy's.
Wait, we have
Who's the president? Like, he sits there, anything over 10,000, he personally signs. Like, people.
Okay.
Anyone online?
No,
It's the same as
actually,
always.
he wants to know. And the person that works for the Trump organization that does all that stuff, he says anything over 10,000 at his desk, and he personally signs it with a Sharpie, and his signature's like this long.
Yeah, I know.
It's like literally, every signature is like two or 3 seconds. That's not on this. Huh?
No.
That's not good. He raised it.
I think from my notes, we got to section 4.6, local infrastructure and servicing, page 23. Is that right? Because then I have other notes from Andy, so I just want to make sure.
Yes.
That's right.
That's correct.
Page 23.
Oh, I forgot the maps. Do we need the maps today?
I have little versions, but I didn't bring a big map either.
Okay, well, not that. We're doing a lot of maps.
Okay, they ended up at the start of.
You see, I'm hurrying, and I
4.6.
didn't bring the maps.
So,
Didn't get the
so where were,
Emmys.
Kelly wants to say something. Yes.
Oh, right, you gotta go back.
I
Well,
believe,
it was a,
just a rethinking.
Okay.
Yeah, under 4.5.2, item number 4. I thought a lot more about this, and I believe we should keep that in the in this section. We originally talked about removing it, especially the small group care facilities. And we were basing it on, or my ideas were based on, how could you make a business plan for it? It's not my business to tell somebody or even make decisions regarding if they could make a business plan for it. So I believe that should remain in.
How do you guys feel?
Well, I brought that,
You kind of advocated for
I
that last time.
advocated for like a group home, like for example, if somebody in the family has an adult who has disabilities, I mean, like in Castlegar, they have group homes for these folks. Like, are we excluding these folks from our area? It's the question, like, I mean, because if we're gonna say that we can't have a group home in area I for folks that have challenges, like, is it? I personally don't feel comfortable with that. And I know I came to get some eggs at Mary's at his mom's place, and he asked me this question. He said, I was thinking about this. I said, well, that's how I feel. I mean,
So I feel I parallel.
Yeah,
Eileen's,
so to me, it's like, I don't think we should
exclude.
exclude these folks. I think, I mean, you don't want, maybe a recovery center or something like that, but generally folks that need a home for a permanent home, why not?
A home with support, yeah.
Okay,
With support.
so
I don't know.
and I thought about this as well, and what happens is that we, right now, and I have a question for Dana, they're really small group care facilities, what zoning is that under right now? Is that under institutional? Is that the only place you could actually have a group care facility under the institutional zoning?
The small one, it depends on the size. The really small ones are actually protected under the Community Care and Assisted Living Act, just like a daycare, so they can go anywhere. You can't zone them out. And then the larger ones we have in our more institutional type zones.
And the key thing is that if anybody wanted to set up something that didn't meet that
The act.
small threshold, they'd have to go to a rezoning.
That's correct.
process. So
Is there actually a numeric line on small to large?
Yeah, daycare is 6 and community care. If you keep talking, I'll pull it up.
there is, and it's a reasonable number.
Okay,
Yeah, it's not so huge.
I do, you know.
Yeah.
Second thought on it.
Okay, good. I'll keep it.
And then in 5, we crossed out large, so we want to leave large back in there again.
Yeah, I'll just keep it the way it was originally. Okay.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks,
Yeah.
Kelly. It's like-
No, I like
But
that. It's good to think it through,
That's
right?
the whole point of these meetings is you think about stuff and you can rethink stuff. That's good. And
Right.
remember, this is a living
Yeah, exactly.
document.
Yeah.
Like it's not,
Mhm.
we can just suggest.
Well, the thing is this, because I was personally involved in those group homes and I visited them. So to me, what is the difference with this house standing that has 4 challenged folks living there or their neighbor? Like, it's their home.
And there is oversight through Interior Health.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
They're not rogue. They have licensing they have to go through and
Otherwise you're segregated.
Standards.
And I don't like that.
The other thing, Dana and I spent a couple of sessions, going through the rest of the OCP, doing any corrections, just spelling to capitalization, like just housekeeping stuff, not substantive things, but housekeeping. And so we did 2 sessions on that, and we went through the whole document. And we don't have to even bring those up here.
so yeah, we were more, I wanna say we're almost grammar focused. And but some other little things, niggly little things that didn't change the wording or the intent of any policies. And then we made the things that Andy did flag, we just made a list of things to come back and discuss. So I've got those listed, but before, and I don't think we don't have anything until we get to section 5. So I'll just maybe ask the APC, anything else in section 4 that you want to talk about before we get to section 5? We're on 23.
Unless.
If you have any notes, just let me know. We didn't have anything major to bring up between when I met with Director Davidoff, just some capitalization, grammar, adding some of our documents to like documents that are referenced into a glossary so they're easy to find instead of just being mentioned in our OCP. And that's all. We didn't have much to say about the end of section 4.
I do have something to raise in section 4 that we didn't discuss as a topic.
Okay. And one thing, section 4.10 talks about climate mitigation and
Yes.
energy. And since the climate action, not plan anymore, climate action document has passed, I just sent this section off to Paris again and just said, can you just take a look and see if this is still relevant and up to date, or if you suggest any changes?
Perfect.
I haven't heard back yet. I'm sure she's taking some R&R.
Given staff direction on where we're moving, and it was a very long, one of the longest things that we debated and discussed. And a motion was passed that now provides the staff with guidance. And it is a direction that we are moving in, and that will be reflected in this section.
That's right.
But we
So
don't have the wording.
if she suggests changes, I'll be sure to let you know. But the staff person that worked on that project, I've just sent her this wording again to just make sure that through that process, she doesn't recommend changes because this was kind of written before that process. before all that community engagement took place.
So we now have language that could go in.
Yes, you might see amendments to this, and if you do, I'll send them to you as a group, yeah. Anything else about section 4 that the group wanted to talk about?
And just
Let me
one thing in
Section 4 is how
that climate action section,
climate has.
the motion
Yes,
that
there.
passed at our board meeting, the language built into that is things being practicable, fiscally feasible, business case analysis done before we move forward on stuff. Like, really, we listened to what people told us. At the board, there was a huge debate, and we even learned something new at that board meeting last month. And that was from a delegation that presented and talked about super polluter, a question that came to the board, excuse me. And the question that came to the board was, are we part of the Sue Big Oil class action? And all of us didn't know what that was. So we asked staff the question, are we part of that class action? Because other municipalities are. Why aren't we part of that? Why aren't we getting money from super polluter funds or polluter super funds? And the key thing is, instead of taxing our ratepayers. So we built all of that into the motion. So it was really good. And the emails I know that we received from the people that presented, and were, even the delegation that presented that morning talked about, the science, and not supporting the climate action initiatives, but opposed. And what ended up happening is that we learned from that. We learned from everything. And the emails that I know I received, and I'm sure the rest of the board received, from all the groups, was that we did really good work. And the resolution that we passed was good work. So that was pretty sweet. So, we actually went through a 2-year process or more. We started in 2016, actually. 2016 on that, the climate action. And so we're respecting the work that's been done to date. We're moving forward on our initiatives that we've been working on, and then anything new we have a plan. So that's hopefully what we'll be doing. Okay, so now we're at 5.
Was there anything else from anyone on 4.6, 7, 8, or 9, or 10? Otherwise, yeah, I'm happy to jump to 5. Okay, so section 5 starts on page 32. So this section is labeled the development strategy, and you can think of it like section 4 is policy that applies to the entirety of the RDCK, and it's categorized by the themes. And then section 5, you can think of this is the plan, like, of how we want the area to grow or to look like. So you can think of these future land use designations as the key that goes with that future land use map. So if you look at a map and a property is RR, you look, okay, rural residential, okay, these are the policies that tell me what that means. Oh, this property is commercial. Okay, these are the properties that guide a property if it's designated as commercial. So you can think of this section as kind of going hand in hand with this future land use map that we have. So firstly, there's some policies that talk about just growth in general, and then we get into the land use designation. So there's rural residential, which is your large rural properties. You see a lot of these in Pass Creek. They're going to be pink on this map. Country residential is kind of our default residential zone. So Shore Acres, Glade Central, Throms Terrace, you see that designation. Suburban residential is our smallest residential lot. So that's areas that have a system. So Brilliant and Wiccan. And then We have village residential, which isn't assigned yet to any property, but it's a space holder to match our policies that we agreed upon about, you know, different types of, a variety of different types of housing for affordable housing or seniors housing, and where that should go. And so in the future, it would have to go through an application because we haven't pre-designated any properties, but we've created, an appropriate designation. So there's a guidance there about what that could look like. And then, so those are all the residential ones, and then we get into the employment lands ones. Of course, you have your commercial, industrial, agriculture, resource area. And then the last category is kind of, I've labeled it civic and open space, which would be community services. That would be your schools, your rec centers, fire halls, that kind of use, public utility, parks and recreation, and environmental reserve, which would be those known environmentally sensitive lands. So on section 5.1 or 5.2, were there any questions or comments?
Written that- I did have one thing that I'm gonna mention, is that they would really help me. And we talked briefly about this, that when you have like rural residential, it's RR. So if you have country residential, to me, it would be a lot easier if that was a CR zone, not an RC zone. And then suburban residential would be SR. And village residential would be not an RV zone, but a VR zone. And so we talked about this, and Dana had a logical explanation why we don't do it that way. Because we would be all alone doing it that way, because everyone else would have zoning, you know, that
Who is this everybody else?
every
All
other.
the other electoral areas.
In the regional district would have,
Well, so we have 17 wrongs, and so we're gonna keep
not
it that?
17, not 17. We don't have 17. There would be 11 wrongs and one right.
Oh.
My mind works the opposite of Andy, where I would think of it, the R tells me the class, it's residential, and then the next letter tells me the subclass. Okay, it's remote residential, oh, it's country residential. So my mind likes the R first, because then all
Oh,
the residential ones are then gonna be R, and all the commercial are gonna be C, and so,
I like that, Dana.
but it's really a matter of preference. And then I just said, I think I also score a point because then the RGIS mapping will be consistent.
He gave me lots of reasons why we should.
But I did concede that RV is a terrible acronym because people are gonna think recreation vehicle. So that one we're probably gonna switch to VR.
Oh, I got one.
Baby steps in.
Okay, so, some acronyms and two-letter acronyms. This business under 8.2.2,
8.2.2.
where we have,
Hold on. What
I
page
don't
you
know
on?
why the numbers are that way. Maybe it's 5.2.2, it's probably 5.
What page is that on?
Page 33.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Wait,
it shouldn't be 8.2, that shouldn't be 8.2, that should be 5.2.2 there, sorry.
Yeah.
You got that?
And so under item number 4, I know that's a desire to have at least 1 hectare, and that's based on our zoning rules and stuff that are subdivision rules. But there's a lot of existing non-compliance in that regards. Sub 1 hectare. So there's at least 1 hectare in size. I don't know how applicable it is because there's so many non-applicable.
But they're grandfathered.
Yeah.
They're non-conforming use.
And we have that exists today, and so there's a lot of properties that are zoned, say like Shrikers, R2, which has a minimum lot size of 1 hectare, and they're less than 1 hectare.
Yeah.
They still enjoy the uses of that zone, but they can't subdivide.
Yeah.
And if anyone was to subdivide a lot in the future, they would need, we'll say, at least 2 hectares, so they could cut it in half, 1 hectare, 1 hectare. So,
Unless it's never been subdivided before, then there's some weird little grandfathering clause that says the original house could be subdivided to some ridiculously small amount, and then the
I don't
remaining,
think so.
well, it's been done now. It's been
Our
done.
zoning bylaw there is a clause in the local government act that if you're cutting a piece off for family, you can set a different minimum lot size. And so our zoning bylaw has decided that's 0.8 of a hectare, I think. So I've seen,
Ministry of Transportation.
yeah, I've seen that, but I haven't seen just if you're the original family, you can avoid the subdivision rules.
Have been some tiny subdivisions.
Well, the stuff is big.
Flabbergasting to me. Which one?
This is right next door to me.
But there have been some that have been divided by a highway.
Yes, that's a good.
And there's one in Glade
Yeah,
in particular where that new house is.
that's Nick's Road there. That's Road.
Yeah, but you see, right where the road goes there. And so that was, when I first saw that, I'm going, I talked to staff, I says, is this
Yeah.
allowed? And they said, yes. And so that one is a very small lot. It still meets health requirement for septic and things like that. But it's,
The road divided the property.
the road divided the property.
Andy's right, that is an exemption if they're a road plowed.
I could give you two examples right now. Okay, Alex Mussolenko. He made his original house.
Yes,
He had 6 acres.
yes.
He cut off 1 acre for himself, and then he had 2.5 acre, 1 hectare lots, one for Steve and one for Marla.
When was this done?
This was done in the last 30 years.
Oh.
Debiaks were next door. They had just under 5 acres. And he kept 3.8 for himself, and he cut off 1.2 of the original house, so he could have all of the water.
Acre or hectare?
I'm gonna go with acres. So that's a half acre. Maybe it was a 0.8.
I'm happy to look into like a specific instance, but it could be that it was an older zoning bylaw that had different subdivision sizes.
Okay.
I wonder, because Area I came into this zoning bylaw 2000.
1995, we had the rules
Yes.
in
Yeah.
96.
Yeah, but those rules could have been different than these rules now. No, they've always been the same.
They were 2.5 acre.
They were 1 hectare.
One lot size.
Maybe it'd be 1995.
96 was when it passed. And the zoning and the OCP passed at the same time. And the community, just like this survey we did, and that past survey, we have 2/3 of our community doesn't want smaller lot sizes than a hectare.
In all honesty, if it was subdivided more than a decade ago, there might be a paper trail, but there might not be, to be honest.
There was there's a family, what there is, I can't think of the section in the, it's not in local government act. It's some kind of a thing through the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure for a family subdivision. That's what this is. And there was an exemption where the ministry, not the regional district, could approve a smaller lot size that was less than what the zoning minimum was. And that was, it was referred to as a family subdivision. And what happened is that it was very particular about where this could be done. And then you still had to meet all the other requirements. But it wasn't something that went through the regional district. It was strictly through the ministry, Transportation and Infrastructure, and it went to the approving officer. And I've seen this probably 3 or 4 times in my time. But they're not referred to the APC or to the director.
Well, anyways,
You know how long family lasts? It could last
Oh, yeah.
forever, or it could last
Yeah.
till next week too, so.
but generally, just so you know, 1 hectare is a standard for lots that have on-site servicing, because then you have enough room for your structures, your septic, your backup septic, and space for your water source, and that to be spaced out from your
But
neighbors.
Kelly, you're right, and there was an override, like it overrode the Ministry of transportation and infrastructure could override the health requirement, the health, everything. It overrode everything. It was
If
just-
you were in a city, the approving officer, that's the person that approves subdivisions, would be part of your organization. But because we're in a rural area, that actually is the Ministry of Transportation. So they refer to us and we tell them what our rules are, but they are the ones that approve the subdivision.
No, you're not.
No, you're not. You're not.
But there are exceptions. And this is where I've seen this at least 3-4 times. We are. I love it. Village residential. You know why, Dana?
Why?
Because that is us, our background, our culture.
This
It's
village.
community residential.
Yeah, that's
All
cool.
of it. And I think of cluster housing, I think of,
I'd like to say I thought of that, but I didn't.
thank you. But thank you for,
And then the first thing that me and Andy flagged to talk about was 5.2.8 resource area, unless anyone has something before we get to that. On the commercial side or industrial side,
yeah,
any questions or comments there?
yeah. So we're dealing with this right now, in Lake Central. Again. And so what ends up happening is that, is it resource area or is it like, when does it become industrial use rather than a resource area? And that's my question, is what percentage of that use is industrial? What percentage of that use is resource area?
I would say once you're getting like buildings or processing happening, you're going more to an industrial. Resource area is more like logging, quarrying, that kind of thing.
Okay, and then in 2, it says these uses are generally located in isolated locations on public land under provincial jurisdiction and away from community centers.
Yeah, you flagged that.
But we also know that these things happen right beside residential, property zoned RC, the CR, I like the CR. Rural.
Residential country.
Well, rural country, right? Country residential, like the RC zone. And what happens is that there's nothing precluding a Mine Act permit application in the heart of a residential community. Nothing under the legislation, except for there are some guidelines that the Directorate of Aggregate Services has recommended, and this is a government agency, about how this is supposed to work. How you have these resource areas in a residential area or beside a residential area. And the thing is, as a set of policy guidelines, the Directorate of Aggregate Services, and I had no idea this existed until it was Chair Kettle, who was the chair of the board. He comes up to me one day and he says, I know you have a real concern about this in your area. And you remember what we were doing? We got everybody in, like, to have meetings and all kinds of stuff. And we realized that there's nothing you could do. So what ended up happening is that these developments were not neighbor friendly. And so what ended and continue not to be neighbor friendly. And in essence, the neighbors are being taken advantage of in a very big way, or at least that's the perception. And the accountability is, how do we put it, questionable. And the seriousness which concerns are taken take forever, and even then, nothing happens. That's the perception anyway. Eileen, am I describing it correctly?
I'm just listening with both ears.
So the thing is, do we build in, do we attach as an appendix?
But we did, you already requested that in section 4 point.
And so this is what Dana said to me, that those recommendations from the Directorate of Aggregate Service, you know what it is? It's the Directorate of Gravel Extraction Services. That's what it is. And John Kettle, I says, Chair Kettle, what, he gives me a card. He says, what the heck is this? He says, this is the, where you call, this is the Directorate of Aggregate Services. And I says, what are they, this is where all these services reside, like, 20 different, no, this is all gravel. And I go, gravel pits? He says, this is what it's called. So I phone them and they send me their recommendations. Beautiful recommendations. Guess what? They're not legislation. They're not regulation. They're just recommendations. So for a neighbor-friendly development, if you can implement the Director of Aggregate Services recommendations, you could actually have something like that happening because they're good recommendations. If you don't, then we have, as we say in our culture, a kashpa.
Which is equivalent to forage.
So yeah, so in the aggregate and mineral resources policies, we added encourages that the recommendations of the Directorate of Aggregate Services be followed with respect to aggregate and community interface areas, which is the best we can do is encourage it. And whenever we get a referral from the province to pass those along, because we're not doing the mines permit, we're a referral agency and the Crown, the province is making.
So do we
Issuing that.
encourage? Where do we do, these uses are generally located in isolated locations on public land, but it's not just public land, it's on private land as well, and away from community centers. Do we have stronger language there? We discourage locations. You see where I'm going? It's actually, this is actually, do we put language there that, like, do we encourage that type of stuff or we discourage it? We can't stop it, but as our official policy, what do we do there? So that's where I'm gonna stop. Anybody got any comments?
If you're talking about RA, you don't know where does it talk anything about private property.
But RA.
No, it's fine. You're a guest speaker, Walter.
We don't know.
It's an open meeting.
So this is only RA.
Yeah.
So the resource area would be on private land. Public land is not zoned. We don't zone.
We do.
Oh, yeah, we can, sorry. But the key thing is that, do you have a resource area in the middle of a residential development? Like technically, somebody could come along and apply for a mine permit in the middle of the Boykin subdivision. Technically, and guess what's happening? Right next door. They're extracting gravel. Right beside Boykin subdivision,
Yeah.
in an unzoned area.
That's Area H, that's the one.
Yeah.
But in Wild West, but the,
Here, let me just put this, this is the issue we're having in our gravel pit right now. Not the fact that he's digging and selling his own gravel, is the fact that he's hauling in stuff from outside sources, mixing it with another outside source dump or whatever comes in, and he's reselling that as topsoil or whatever else he's selling. And the trucks are bringing in, sifting, sorting, and then other trucks come in and take them out, and who knows where, and I mean, right now, it's crazy right now.
That sounds frustrating, but that's something that we can.
I mean,
the land beside Eileen's place, there is land that's in the ALR. A portion of it.
Mhm.
And so then the ALR rules apply, and then our soil removal bylaw applies, but they're not removing soil, they're mixing different products there. So it's kind of really frustrating.
That should fall into the,
Industrial
that
operation.
should fall into the processing category, which we
Thank
do
you.
have say in.
That's in-
We don't have say in extraction.
Right.
So even, I would almost say what we're talking about, resource area, I wouldn't designate an area in the middle of, say, Boykin, the resource area, because there's a gravel pit there. I would say only extraction is allowed, and then after you need to put it back so it can be its future use in the future, which is residential. But anything processing wise, besides the minimal amount of processing to get the resource off that property, is something that we should be able to control
Right.
with zoning.
That could be, industrial.
So I'm not super familiar with, I know there's been enforcement on that property in the past. I'm not super.
You just need to come visit. I think I'd invite you all to come visit on a nice
No,
warm day.
We believe you guys.
That is just
Yeah, no, I know.
really important because, and I have already asked the question, when does it become, that's why I'm bringing this up.
Mhm.
When does something become industrial? At what point does it become commercial? At what point does it become, so it's a matter of degree? If
Yeah,
it-
so a
so if you
resource
have-
area should have only the minimal amount of processing to get that resource off to where it's actually being processed. So if you're logging, you're bucking the branches off and everything so you can get it on the truck and get it to the sawmill. The sawmill isn't at that property.
But we're allowed sawmills.
And okay, maybe that was a bad example, because in Area K especially, they do them on the same property, but that's what I'm saying.
And here we have,
Same with a gravel pit. You can get the gravel, crush it so it can go into a truck to go somewhere else. But as soon as you set up processing on that property, that's when local government starts to have a say again. Just the extraction and the mineral processing, we don't. We can give referral comments. But once there's that element of processing, now we can, through zoning or through a temporary use permit, start to have some say and some conditions, or just say, no, this is an appropriate area.
could you please send an email to Eileen and copy me
Yeah.
on what you just said?
Yeah, do you want me to copy bylaw too?
Yeah. Because I think that's where this is.
Because what's happening is, like, I mean, this is again, not me personally knowing about what's coming in, but I mean, my neighbor, he's familiar with this, and like he says, the clearing that they're doing for Kolesnikov's there and below the dam, below the dam in,
Mhm.
the expansion there. Well, whatever is off there is coming into the gravel pit, and he's mixing it all up and he's selling it. As I say, there's trucks coming in all the time.
Yeah, it's just, if
It's
you want to
just-
do that, then you should be zoned property.
Right,
And if you want to do that business, then you should apply for the zoning. And that's where the community has a say. But to do it, and it contravenes, like, it could be contravening the Mine Act, permit provisions. And it also could be contravening the Agricultural Land Commission provisions.
So really what we're saying is, because the RDCK is complaint driven or
Yeah.
complaint motivated,
Yeah.
a complaint needs to go in.
Oh, believe me,
that's done.
There's
20 years of, I could not believe, like, when I
But
first
this is
started,
something new.
this is something new,
So let's just keep.
and it is being investigated.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you've had the letters have gone out. Yeah.
All I
So,
know is I listened to the, unsightly bylaw enforcement seminar that we went to. What a disaster. What a effing disaster that enforcement is. Basically,
Oh.
if it isn't neck deep, we're not interested in hearing about it, is what I heard.
so guess what? And then that's what comes to me, and then I am the villain, because I will always err on the side of asking staff to please investigate. And what happens is that staff investigates, and now I've got a letter written, email I received, threatening lawsuit. So it's like, can't win.
anything, okay,
First,
no worries.
I'll-
Anything
Okay, what's the
Anything
next?
else?
Oh, the next one is 5.3.2. Is that the next one that you?
So the next, if we don't have anything else about the land designations, the next section is community-specific policies. So I don't wanna breeze through if someone had anything else to say about the future land use designation? Or do we feel ready to talk about page 36, community-specific policies? We're okay? So here, we've got the communities divided up, and there's policies that are specific to each community. Some you'll see repeated, but generally there's policies specific to that community. So we're looking at section 4 is the entirety of the RDCK. Section 5 is kind of the key to the future land use map about what we want to see for land use. And then section 5.3 you can consider kind of supplemental, the keys to different communities because they all are a little unique and different. So anything for section 5.3, hit me. We just had little
In our list, we were adding
community housing
community housing around.
around the halls, yeah.
Okay.
If we can access septic.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
No, but that,
Utilities.
well, yeah, it's subject to, right? So that was a thing that, so 5.3.15 in Pass Creek encourages the continued multi-use of the Pass Creek community for childcare services and recreational program, and community housing. And so basically, if you have an acreage, if you can address the septic issue, well, all the servicing issues, right? Then community housing makes sense. But do we look at that and say, where would we put community housing in Pass Creek? Well, community hall property is one logical source. And then when we hit Brilliant, there's a lot to talk about. So does that make sense?
What size is
Same
that
thing with
lot
Carrick.
that the hall is on, do you know?
Hmm?
What size is the lot the hall is on?
If you get servicing address, you don't need a very big piece of property to put.
You
community
wouldn't be
housing.
able to have a well and a septic on it. You'd actually have to get a water system and yeah.
Spud Hill Waterworks.
Water, that's the big thing.
Yeah, it's terrible up there. Spud Hill, their
It's subject to
waterworks,
servicing
it's
water,
just,
There's people that don't have water.
yeah. And they've punched wells now and stuff, yeah, cause it's just,
Property had a real
it's a
problem.
really bad place for water, that whole
Where's
place.
Spud?
The water system around the hall is, they're called Spud Hill Waterworks.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just the families up there, yeah, yeah, they've got a
Okay.
lot against them. They bring their water in from the creek, and then it has a big crawl up a hill and stuff, and like from down below, right? So it's
Oh,
got
we have
gravity,
way on the other side.
yeah, so just got like,
But then we have the creeks back up, so we're okay.
right, but most of them have punched wells there, but anyway, that's just.
They go deep.
So do you want community halls added, for example, in Pass Creek? If it's no, then say no. If it's yes, then we add it.
Community housing, you mean, not community halls?
Housing.
My concern, and this is just anything that is around community housing, is you have to know who owns that property. And I think that is a big issue.
What do you mean?
Well, like, for example,
We're talking only on the hall owned property, not around.
this is what I'm saying, on the hall owned property.
Yeah.
So, for example, I mean, you were involved, Andy,
Yeah.
when that initial community plan, housing plan went for the Burn Cultural Center. You were involved with
It's
that.
coming back into here.
I know.
Oh, I get, okay, but that's a different.
Well, okay, well, I mean, again, I mean, you don't want to put that in the official community plan maybe, but the logistics of that actually happening, how do you see that? I mean, it's lovely, we can propose it and put it in, but honestly, like,
To practically do it.
We have it in the, maybe let's talk about Brennan first. Because in the 1995, 1996 language for Brennan had everything in it. And we worked really hard for 6 years
I think I was.
Yeah, to get that language into the official community plan. And it's all gone in this OCP version. And I asked Dan, I says, can we put that language that we had our current OCP back into the Brilliant hall property? And then at the same time, we talked about community housing at other halls. So so for the Brilliant one, for sure, I would like to see almost all that language incorporated here. Because right now, none of it's incorporated.
The only thing in Pass Creek, Andy, as it is, if it's a bigger event, traffic's parking on Pass Creek Road, our parking lot isn't very big.
Yeah, it's not a big problem.
Yeah, so I don't even know if you could get any community housing and really make it work outside of maybe a caretaker suite off of the hall or something, but I just can't see.
And that's something that doesn't have to be there for every hall.
It'd be great if we had some land and to build some type of
There is
housing, but
There's a much up the creek. And again, the water. There's all the systems, nobody will give you water anymore.
we will.
Oh, yeah.
Upper Pass Creek.
Yeah.
Will,
Yeah.
But I know we
is
would,
Bud Hill will or will Upper Pass
Yeah,
Creek?
but you're, but.
Upper
you're
Pass
too-
Creek is
You're
another
too far
system.
away from the house.
we'll build
Okay, so anybody on Brilliant, do you want the old language in here? It's really expansive.
And it's about housing and things like that.
Housing,
Put it in.
all of it, and we need to see that again. But
But put it in only, like, why did it fail? Why, there was
we
an
don't talk
initial.
about that. You know, right now, we are removing what we currently have as language in our current official community plan that we took 6-7 years to get into the official community plan. And now it's being completely removed. And you've seen this. When you look at the options for around the Brilliant Cultural Center, you've seen them at many meetings. That's out of the OCP.
It's gone.
And it's gone now. So I'm saying that's a huge loss.
Could you tell us why?
Yeah, and that's where I was going.
I just didn't know about it. I'm happy to put it back in.
It's up to us.
Oh,
No, I'm just wondering why it was removed then.
It's just
Oversight on my part of not having the context of being around in 1995.
I'm more concerned about
we are
it,
talking
it
about
failed.
that
Like,
we just
what has
bring that
changed
back
that's gonna
and
make it go
that is
again? Is,
okay.
like, is it of any
Nobody's
use to put in?
removed it intentionally from us.
So, but no.
Okay,
Because I don't know why
You
it
get
failed.
it?
yeah. I hope we could go ahead.
So for Brilliant, do we bring that back?
I think you've heard it. I like the idea.
Anybody
I
opposed?
mean, I think it would be
Yeah.
great in theory. Practical, is it gonna
I'm
happen?
talking in Brilliant.
Brilliant, even in
If
brilliant.
you don't have it in here, it's not gonna happen.
Ah, okay.
Ah,
Okay, put it in.
and if we have to zone to make it happen, then we don't have to do what we have to do in Terry's. We have to rezone the property to be able to put a daycare into the hall
Because we're under ALR.
because we're under the wrong zoning.
Mm.
That's the stuff that you fix. So if you have it in here, you want community housing, you want whatever. If it's in your overarching policy document, then the zoning flows from these policy guidelines.
What did you want to say, Kelly?
If we're finished with housing, then I need a point of clarity.
Yeah, of course.
So I wanted under item number 5. What
Okay, where are you now? What page?
we're brilliant.
Brilliant number 5.
Mm.
Okay.
So recognize the values of the pills.
Mhm.
What a piddle.
The Piddles is Brilliant Flats.
Pretty fast.
Oh, that's an area.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's the.
First Nations name
We have
for
a
Brilliant
huge
Flats. Yeah.
memorandum of agreement with the government, regional district, everybody on the Brilliant Flats.
And then,
Supported by the USCC.
so, no, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And so why are we, I know we are including the other First Nations, but why are we specifically labeling or naming the Sinaiaks?
The Sinaiaks Confederacy.
We know for sure it was a village site of the Sinaiaks and that there's burials of Sinaiaks people there, but also the last family to live there, the Christian family were Sinaiaks. So we know other nations came there and used that spot for fishing, but we know primarily it was the most important spot to the Sinaiaks peoples.
I'm gonna send you all a 280 page report on the, it's an ethnographic, recent, like within the last year on the Sinaiaks Confederacy. And what's happening is that we're having all these meetings right now. I think there's over, 100 people that met with the Sinaiaks Confederacy.
The one I went to was probably over 100.
Over 100, there were 3 sessions. One session was 100. Everybody's being invited. We're looking at the mapping.
Oh, I actually have an exciting update about that. Remember way back to our first meeting, the beginning of the OCP is just talking about the context, and we had a section about First Nations history, and I had just written a quick placeholder and said, the wording will come from someone else. It's actually, I just checked in last week about where that was at, and Eileen Delaney Perks, who wrote the book Geography of Memory and actually presented that ethnohistory, she's the one writing the blurb for us. So we should have that real soon.
Where we're at right now, because this applies to school district and regional district. School District 20 is completely within the Sinaiaks Confederacy, and these are of the Colville Confederated Tribes, the Arrow Lakes, and like it's finally we're getting. It may take us another 7 years to get there, but we're finally starting to see some logic behind what we are, whose territory we're in, even though there'll always be competing claims. But at the end of the day, the evidence is coming along very nicely. And I remember reading a report by Randy Johnson that was done in the 70s or something like that, and this builds upon this, and it flows from the Supreme Court of Canada Desautol decision, and there are some really big things happening right now, or starting to happen, in terms of a better understanding of all this. So somewhere here, we need to maybe have another glossary item with maybe accessing that new report as to where we are. And the Brilliant Flats, Capitzels, is actually a big part of that.
And so by the wording of this, does that lend itself to preserve and continue conservation planning? So it could mean
huge
parks and trails?
No, it's gonna be all conservation down there. That's what we're looking at. And what happens is that it's like, there's already a memorandum of agreement, understand? I think it's an MOA or an MOU, I can't remember which one it is, that the regional district has signed, that the province has signed, about what's here. And the USSC was part of that in terms of saying, no, it's hands off down there, full stop. It is in the hands of First Nations.
Yeah, we don't know where it'll end up, but I know right now it's between negotiations with First Nations and the province. And so all indications are that land would be for conservation purposes, but that is currently kind of in private negotiations right now.
First Nations say we would like to do this. Put it this way, if you ever want to go for a really beautiful walk, go for a walk across the river on what we used to call the meadows.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea how beautiful it was there, because as kids we used to swim there and stuff like that. And I went with a group, Suffolk College and First Nations, and went on a tour, and the things that were flames and the camas and the bees. I couldn't believe the bees, BEES, like the what is there. And it's beautiful. And that's the image, that is what it's planned for. For down here,
So,
everyone's on site, so that's where it sits. Because we were looking at it for septic, for development.
Good time for
Community gardens.
I'm just a little confused because when I talked to a spill response, a provincial employee, she was frequently talking about the ONA and consultation with them.
Well, all First Nations groups are being consulted.
Yeah,
right
well,
now. The ONA is one of the,
No, I'm just saying she didn't really specifically talk about the Sinai, so we talked quite extensively about the.
we're talking about the Sinai Confederacy that were declared extinct in the fifties and now have been undeclared.
Yeah.
You know, extinct.
Okay.
By the Supreme Court of Canada, and then all of these pieces are fitting together. That ethnography is worth reading. It really, if you're interested in that perspective, it is the best thing out there. And the person writing the section for our OCP is one of the key people that did that ethnography.
Is there a link to it, or is it a
Yes.
document that you could? that
It-
you
It's a
would-
document.
Do we need an extension cord?
yeah.
Yeah, I could send that, I'll send it. All the, and it's something brand new. It's like, this is like within the last,
Yeah, it's all evolving recently, very recently, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good at 7:20. One more section after
Yep.
this one. So housing, Andy's Director Dadoff's suggestion about housing kind of seems specific to maybe some areas that will work in some areas, not so much. So Pass Creek, maybe no, Brilliant, yes. And then Terry's, we didn't discuss Terry's, the other communities.
the land, the ALC would never allow it. That's our problem. We can't even build a daycare there. An attachment to the hall is not possible. ALC will not approve it. Having a separate standalone daycare is not approved, won't be approved. So that's why we're constrained by working within the hall, which is where it sits.
I mean, technically it could be a second level, but that could be a bit pie in the sky.
Yeah. you're
So
right.
do you want me to take it out then? Do you want me to take it out then?
Do you want an aspirational goal of community housing around the Terry's and Thrums Community Hall as an aspirational goal?
Never thought of it.
Say yes or no. It goes in, that's it. Goes in now.
It doesn't mean it'll happen. It means if the property owner proposed it, we'd say, yeah, that's supported by our OCP policy. Now I'll go talk to the ALC. Do you know what I mean? It's not like we put it in and it's gonna go. It's just saying if you wanted to propose that, we'd have your back because we're policy support.
Let that happen for
Well,
next 10
I
years.
mean, I mean, for future, who knows where people are gonna live, maybe.
This is a 50-year, well, not 50-year, 25-year dog.
Well, what do you think? I mean,
I say yes.
I would say I'm all for housing.
Absolutely. Why limit yourself on
Yeah.
what you could be?
Well, we were gonna put solar panels up there maybe.
That's a valid point, because we think, less is more, don't put it in, because then it reads, but you're saying
Yeah.
if it's not in, it ain't happening.
Throw in the
Yeah.
kitchen sink
Mhm.
and at least then you have
Yeah.
potential for.
Maybe not the
something.
kitchen sink, but maybe not the kitchen sink. But
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, I mean,
What we worked so hard to put into the OCP in the 90s, like for that to be excluded would be a shame.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
anything, okay,
While she's putting it in,
That's it.
Yep.
anything,
Rakers.
next is Glade, anything about Glade?
You want community housing around the, you got land. Guess
Yeah.
what? I've been researching those lands.
Yeah, but
They're not in the Hall Society's name.
no, it's USC.
No. They show up on the mapping as Crown land. Yeah, there's 6 lots there.
There's 6
Yeah,
lots.
you've got a map right now. Can you look it up? When I looked at the BC assessment, just wait, Andy, when I look at the BC assessment authority, Those lands show up as crown land. 4 lots show up as crown
We
land.
just went through that. They were, were they not?
Something wrong there.
There's,
many were
there's
there?
a misunderstanding.
Yes,
because
there
in
is.
the USCC inventory.
It does not, doesn't matter. Take a look at the mapping.
No, but
I did this here, I got it right here. I did this really carefully for this process.
there's a misunderstanding that,
It's not a misunderstanding, it is a problem.
that somebody took them off.
They reverted to crown land
Yeah,
at some point.
well.
So basically, look, I've got the stuff right here. And that's why I'm raising it here under the glade.
And when would have that happened?
I don't know anything. I started looking at all this stuff and I'm going, what the heck's going on here? Because I can't find it under the BC Assessment Authority. They're not individual lots. They're not listed under the assessment authorities as being, it's shaded crown land.
Yeah, but the maps that we have from the old days.
Sorry, maps from the.
What street is it on?
I got it right
What's
here.
the road called?
I got it right.
Blade Division?
Blade Division.
Blade Road, or
Division or
It's-
Blade
it's-
Road?
Yeah, right, it should be. On,
Here, I'll put a photo on it. It's easier to find anyway.
This, I
That's
just
off the
was doing a
ferry.
little bit of research and I'm going, what the heck is this all about?
so it
Well,
doesn't
that is
belong to
very
nobody.
interesting.
It belongs to crown land.
When we were, this meetings, Colin and Kelly and.
The Hall property and all those lands are designated recreational.
Know where I have.
She's got access to a database that has all the.
Here's your-
yeah, okay,
getting off
that's
the
the ferry, you
ferry.
go that way and then you go up.
Go up.
Yeah, you go up and it's right there.
This
It's-
one, hey?
Yeah, that kind of in
There's
there.
6 lots around there. There's
It's,
6 lots. Yeah, I know the lots. I went through every one of them. I kept looking and looking and I go, what the heck? Why doesn't this show up?
Okay.
Well,
Well, I mean,
took 'em off.
we're gonna see right now.
Somebody took them off or whatever it happened,
Some guy in government. said,
because,
"Oh,
I have them, I have
You just wait.
20 years."
Diana, what do you got?
So we'll just roll with that.
'cause
USCC.
as long as I know,
Lots.
Expropriated.
It-
his value.
all the lots belong.
Here's the, okay,
6 lots?
here, well, I haven't looked at all 6 yet,
What are the lots for?
but 1, 2, 3. And then you're looking at the back behind the hall, is that where the lands are?
And the hall.
Yeah, there's 6 lots.
USCC.
I'm just looking at our lands review meeting minutes from October, Andy, and they're noted with
USCC.
6. I don't have the version that has the lot numbers, but.
Well, I looked through,
Nope, I have USCC in our database for all of them.
all 6 lots?
Yep.
Why are they not showing up?
3 up the front, 3 down.
The BC Assessment Authority mapping.
I don't know.
As far as I know,
Okay.
they were all bought, 6 of them by the Glade
If
community.
that's the case, that's good, but it doesn't show up in any public
Oh,
database.
Interesting.
Interesting.
That's my concern. So Diana, if you could please check on that.
Yeah, right, there you go.
You want me to check BC assessment? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah. Why doesn't it show up as in the BC Assessment Authority? Because I did that when the assessments came out. I wanted to see all the hall properties. I went and looked at all the hall properties. And then I look at this, is what the hell? The mapping doesn't show.
Well, that's first for me.
Should see right now what I'm talking. I did printouts of this, and I have it.
BC assessment, I don't know if the owner is identified.
The owner's not
Yeah.
identified, but it identifies, it gives you a lot number, it gives you everything.
Yeah.
Assessed value, doesn't show up.
Oh, interesting.
It does.
Okay.
You got it?
Here's the vacant lot beside it. It has
Yeah, there's one.
legal description, the pit,
There's one lot beside it and the hall property, but not the ones
you
behind.
want the one behind?
There's
By the
4
one
of them
behind.
behind.
There's 4 lots behind.
No, the hall is,
All's on one lot.
and then there's a lot beside it,
That shows up.
and the one behind it, that's 3 lots, and the other 4 go the other way.
Yeah, and that's where I wasn't finding it. The assessment authority.
3 go
database.
this way, and 3 go that way.
I don't have it with me here. I've got it at home.
Okay, the ones that have civic addresses that front the street, you can put them in. The ones that have PIDs on the back, it just says no results. So
That's what-
you're half and half.
And
but
No, it says no results.
it's just not in the BC assessment database. But in our mapping, it's showing it all 6 are owned by USCC.
Yeah, it sounds like
In the RDCA mapping.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't the BC Assessment
Well-
Authority is the taxation authority and it doesn't show them? It says no result.
This is not tax.
No, that's not the case. Yeah, so and I'm going, what the heck is, I don't understand. And in our mapping, they all show up as recreation and culture. All the properties show up as recreation and culture. That's what I was using to try and get the rec commission to provide some money for recreation and culture. And now the mayor had a chat with me here in the last 2 days. Here. When we were meeting here. Or our reimagining. We had a special little meeting after sitting there. And she's saying, well, because she and her husband are, they're the pastors of the
New life.
New Life Assembly. And they say, we don't ask the city for money, we're a church. Why would you ask for money for this hall? I says, because this hall is not a church. Well, but your USC Constitution and bylaws say you are. And why would we give money? And I'm going, it's a cultural center. It was always a pretty cultural center. And they're saying no, and so then the same applies to Schrager's Hall, and the same applies to Glade. And I says, well, the assessment authority for Glade says recreation and culture, it doesn't say church. And and that's what's here on those lots in the back. It's not a church. So this is now these are the arguments I have to use to justify why there should be support.
Anything else for Glade? No, it's okay. I'm
I
just
mean,
gonna
this
keep
is, I'm
going.
bringing it up here because it's site specific to Glade.
Anything else about Glade?
We want community
What about?
around Glade.
well, there's,
Yep, there's sewer, there's not enough water.
Oh, I dug a well in Glade
Well, could be that dog.
with a 12-inch casing. It pumps 500 gallons a minute. And I offered it to the Glade Irrigation District.
Gallons.
Gallons a minute.
a lot of water.
And it is the purest water. It's Odishenya quality water with no treatment required. And I went to the GID and I said, I'm offering this to you as a backup well. And all I need to know is what kind of pump do we put in here?
That's the property that you own
Yeah, up to 12
up
acres.
there.
And I took a chance. There's no water, dug a well, and it was the best water, the cable tube.
Oh, yeah.
We did pump test, doesn't even go down.
Yeah.
No, well, the key thing, but it's in the ground, it's the best ground, you couldn't ask for a better well. And then Paul and Eddie, they said, oh yeah, well, maybe we'll chip in on your well, right? And now they could see, maybe they get the same structure, strata, maybe they don't. And the people that bought our property were the people that lived on Cedarbrae Road. And why did they buy our property? Because the well they dug goes dry in the summer.
Well, that's a fair lady.
Yeah, but I offered it, and then they had the landslide, and then what were they doing? They're putting surface pipes coming from your
Well,
McConan's property all over Glade as emergency backup.
Yeah, they have.
And that, what I was told by the GID people, oh, it's on the wrong side of Glade. Going, okay.
Anything Strikers in Playmore Junction West? It says Playmore West, but we're gonna add Junction. Anything for those communities?
No, there's no room, well, acres.
Yeah, let's do more development in the Voisin subdivision.
Where?
That's exactly what happened. Is that the Boykin subdivision has the Boykin Improvement District with its own bylaws and rules.
Yeah.
If you are in the Boykin Improvement District, those lots are all quarter of an acre.
Yeah.
They're not even a third of an acre or half an acre. Every single property has a septic system on it. And their wells for the Boykin Improvement District are in the subdivision. That's where they get their community water. They have 4 wells. So what happened when Tech was selling the right of way, the community got together and said, let's buy this for green space. And some people quit the Boykin Improvement District when that passed. Well, happened to be realtors partner that quit. And then all of a sudden, Tech sold to private owners. And those private owners then said, Boykin Improvement District, give us water. And Boykin Improvement District said no. So they went ahead and punched wells in the middle of the Boykin Improvement District and developed them, developed the properties that they bought. And the regional district had no choice but to approve what they were doing because the Boykin Improvement District rules didn't apply because the right of way was never in the Boykin Improvement District.
Messy.
And those people came at me like you wouldn't believe. And then they want to do more stuff. And they're applying for it. Do you want to talk about development in the Boykin Improvement District? It's happening right now.
A lot of room in there, they're so
Oh,
tall.
the right of way that going through is big enough to do all kinds. There's at least 5, 6, 7 new houses that got in there.
Yeah,
And each one has a well.
that I didn't know. I thought they tied in.
Sorry.
And a well and a septic tank.
And a septic tank. And now they want additional.
Oh, now, this is the part that scares me about this Bill 44 and taking the authority away from us and giving it to IHA, and IHA is okay with what's happening at the Boykin, in and around that Boykin subdivision.
They were.
So how am I supposed to feel warm and fuzzy about the IHA? I'm kind of scared a little bit. And it's not even upon them. They could keep on saying, continue to develop Shrikers, continue to develop Shrikers, continue until the water system starts to fail. And then they say, okay, now you have to put in a water system and it's upon you. No cost to us. And that's what scares me about using the IHA as the watchdog.
Do you know who blocked the purchase of the right of way as green space? The Cascarn District Rec Commission.
Oh, nice.
Because they said, we're not gonna buy that. And I go, our recreation master plan says green space is a priority for us to purchase. And we have the right to buy land for park use.
But anyway, honestly,
They voted.
Yeah,
I don't think that
To-
IHA is the right watchdog.
so to Kelly's comment, I don't think this will put your mind to ease, but just so you know, Interior Health Authority, they have their sewerage regulation and the Drinking Water Protection Act, but they are on a professional reliance model. So they don't have staff like they used to that are the watchdog. They get a report from a registered on-site wastewater protection that says it meets the sewerage regulation, and they file it away. And our building permit department says, here's the report from the rope. You get your building permit. So what I've done is talking to Interior Health Authority about the Bill 44, we've done the best we could by including some extra wording in our zoning about if you're gonna have an accessory dwelling, like a detached or a suite, then you have to follow the sewerage regulation and have room for a backup system. I stole that wording from the Columbia Shuswap Regional District because that was kind of the best I could find. So I don't think that puts your mind at ease. It just means that I have the same concerns you do and trying to navigate it the best we can. Not a great answer, but
It's my mind, because they don't have any skin in the game. In the end, when we are forced to put in a commercial water treatment plant, it falls on us as taxpayers, not on them.
Well, what's VIB gonna do if the Schraker's aquifer becomes contaminated? Like,
I hope they're upstream of the turf.
that's fine. 1981, there was a study done after the subdivision was put in place. The subdivision was in place in the 70s.
and we
1981, there was a study done for water for South Slocan, Boykin Improvement District, Shore Acres, include everybody, all of Claymore Junction West. The schools, Brent Kennedy Elementary, to this day, they have a well, and it is red flagged. Do not consume this water. It's not even treatable. The well's contaminated so bad.
and then so also Kelly, we have Claymore Junction, Voisin subdivision, and Shore Acres within our aquifer protection development permit area, which is kind of another tool that kind of adds another layer of protection to sussing out the servicing before granting development rights. But
And if that was in place, then what happened in the Boykin subdivision may have been.
even if just that green belt was in the Voisin Improvement District, then their own bylaws could say something like no wells, like Udashenya says.
The loophole.
And so that's almost a bummer too.
People drove Mack trucks through the loopholes.
So Andy, why is Ben Kennedy flagged? I mean, why is the well so contaminated?
There is.
No, but why?
Not consumable. The aquifer is contaminated where their well is.
Something to do with the piping
by
too.
what?
Like lead in the pipes or something?
No, it's the water is not.
Okay, so-
potable.
So where are they getting the water?
They're bringing in bottled water
Does it?
for human consumption.
Oh,
Even, how about, like Mount Sentinel?
Mount Sentinel's well doesn't have that order.
I get it.
This stuff happened there in the gravel pit
Up on
behind.
top?
Mhm.
We have good water.
Water treatment plant.
Wow.
Yeah, Brent, like people, it's all in the aquifer study that we commissioned.
over there. Something happened.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, something about
You go drive around.
Yeah, this is what I was wondering, like what?
something's.
What's causing that?
There's nowhere to go. People.
All I'm saying is that aquifer study held up our OCP process for 2 years. And we needed to
I know
do
my
it
neighbor,
because,
he was
and that's why
looking at
this
the trailer.
business is so important.
His dad said, "Not enough water."
And it costs, what,
Yeah,
60
little
grand?
trailer, and you went out of trailer.
And Walter and I had to provide the money to pay for that. That was all grant funded.
And I own 2 parts of the 5 cars, so.
Interesting.
I'm on my
Is
own.
the Brent Kennedy contaminated on chemistry or on organic?
Lots of spring.
Chemistry.
My wife's.
That's
there.
my understanding. But you,
I heard it was lead, but
Get
Well,
that
it's
water.
chemistry.
Go get that water.
Okay.
do we have people online?
We do, yeah.
Great.
So we'll have question time.
Basically, just, I'm not sure 100%, but the issue is, but I know the water has not been potable there, and they're bringing in drinking water for human consumption. Bottled water for years. Maybe they have a new source now, I don't know, SB8 would be looking after that. But,
Okay.
Are we ready to talk about section 6, or is there anything else we want to talk about for community specific? Okay, Voisin, something about Voisin?
No, I'm fine with the Wakens.
You okay?
so here we go. The last place we would look at further densification would be the Voisin subdivision, and it's a place that's densifying.
But for the purposes of this plan, we've put in as many tools as we can. We've put a designation where there's no further subdivisions allowed. We've put a development permit area that looks at servicing capacity. Our OCP has policies recognizing that there's not capacity for servicing, so I feel like we've done what we can, but you are right, there's still development rights out there because there's vacant properties there.
The densification has not been.
How did we miss that 25 years ago?
25.
You know, we were looking at
West
the
could
same
be
thing.
40. No, Tech had the right of way.
That's it.
Power lines were not decommissioned. So it was,
That's right, sorry.
and we asked Tech, provide
That changed. a lot.
provide this land to the community. And they wouldn't look at that. They wanted fair market value. And that's when I worked really hard trying to get the regional district to purchase that land as green space. And that went nowhere. That's done. That's done.
So-
Well, Sheracre School is the same thing. I'm gonna talk about that.
Section 6 is our last section in the OCP, and it's labeled implementation because it is the house for all of the tools that can be accessed through an official community plan. So an official community plan is mostly policy, which isn't regulation. That's what we've looked at for most of this document. And the strength in policy is once you've adopted this bylaw, you can adopt new bylaws that aren't following these policies. But there are tools under the Local Government Act that are regulatory as well. And so this section follows the rules of the Local Government Act to set those up so we can use them. So the first is the development approval information area. And in a nutshell, that sets it up so if the applications that are going to the board, or they could have designated staff approvals, it gives us the ability to ask for more information. So if we're getting a rezoning application and temporary use permit or development permit, and we want to know more about the environment or servicing or just impacts we perceive might be on the neighborhood, we can ask for, like for hazardous conditions, we can ask for more information from the applicant. So that's section 6.1, designation area. The area is the entire area I, and justification is kind of setting up that legal groundwork for us to ask for more information when we get these types of applications.
Okay, so 6.2 development permit areas. Right now, our development permit provisions deal with form and character. And we have had a lot of discussions about should we be including could we include hours of operation? Could we include all these other things when you have a development happening? And so Danny was going to follow up with our Louis Carvello, who's our lawyer who did the presentation. So did you get clarity on this?
Isn't that covered already under,
No, it's not covered.
under, bylaw 2440?
Is that your noise bylaw?
Yeah.
That's just making noise.
That's general noise. Hours of operation are not covered.
Well,
No, they're not there.
yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
What does it matter what a person's doing, cartwheels and all, as long as it's done in
They're
silence?
being quiet.
Yeah, well, the key thing is that development permit areas have specific rules and guidelines. And the way it works is that the board doesn't even get to vote on that. We've delegated that to staff. And right now, staff is constrained by only being able to address form and character of the development, landscaping, screening, things like that. But my understanding is development permit areas could also have a lot more stringent, staff could have more authority in terms of what could be managed, what could be required when you apply for a development permit. And basically my understanding, and so what I'm talking about is having development permit areas with provisions with teeth rather than just sort of form and character. And I've gone many times to discussions with staff to say, okay, well, what can we do here? Well, it's form and character. And that's just what our current rules say. So we did have a workshop with a lawyer who specializes in this area. And he talked to us about development permit areas with teeth and what could be done. And so then the question I had to staff was, could you follow up with that lawyer to see if that's the case or not? So Dana was gonna do that, and where are we at?
So I'm gonna back up a bit and explain development a bit more, and then I'll answer that. So development permit areas, the local government acts set up different categories that you can set up a development permit area for. And so the one Andy is referencing is form and character of industrial, commercial, or multifamily. There's also you can have development permit areas for protection of farmland, for protection of the environment, for hazard areas. So form and character is one type. And so in your current OCP, you only have that kind of development permit. In this version of the OCP, we're introducing some new ones. I'll come back to the form and character in a second. I'm not skipping it. Aquifer protection, so that's the shore acres aquifer. So that's under the protection of the natural environment category. And again, it's requiring extra scrutiny around servicing if you're going to put further density in these areas. We have an industrial and commercial development permit, which is similar to what the old OCP has, although we've added more guidelines. We have a riparian protection development permit area, so that is protecting areas around creeks and rivers and watercourses. Requiring you to get a biologist if you're going into that buffer area to build, and then the biologist would give recommendations. And then the last one is a wildfire. So that one is under the hazard category. And so that's new builds having to have certain building requirements that would make their property fire smart. So Andy's question is around form and character, because it's about form and character, massing, siting, materials used, signage, where your parking is, what your landscaping is. And his question is, that's nice. It makes it look nice. It can mitigate some issues to neighbors, but can it do more? And I don't think it can. But Andy's asked me to ask a lawyer just to be sure. And so I have, but it goes through our casual legal advice. And so I haven't heard back yet. But
Did you ask Louis?
yeah, I haven't heard back yet, but I have put that question in.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, I've looked back at his notes from that workshop, and I don't see it. I still think no. The answer is no, but
Notes are very clear.
let's just see what he says. But
Yeah.
I've asked around to other planners,
Yeah.
and the answer is no. So for now,
He's still waiting for an answer.
I will let you all know what the answer is. Yeah.
We're not done this part.
No, yeah, I know we're not done. So the OCP, this section, you'll see the DPs all follow the same setup, and that's because there is a legal things that you have to include. So the purpose of it, the purpose is always referencing what the authority that the Local Government Act gives us, kind of that category that we were just talking about. The justification, so you have to rationalize why you need this development permit area and the objectives, what you're trying to achieve, and the area that this development permit area applies to. And then the guidelines are, someone applies for their development permit, they either meet the guidelines, get their DP, or they don't meet their guidelines and they don't get a DP. So there's not that discretion like if you were looking at a rezoning application or something else. This is the time to review these DPs because this is the time to make the guidelines. And after that, it's just a review of, do you meet the guidelines or do you not meet the guidelines? Does that make sense? I've tried to explain it maybe rather fast, but
what is good is that, what is better, I should say, than what we had before, is that we have all these other development permit sort of overarching policy statements. What we had before was very narrow in scope. And let's just say if someone decided not to be neighbor friendly, it was really problematic. And so this is where it goes back to that neighbor friendliness. So if somebody decides to take advantage of the language and really doesn't care about the impact on neighbors, then that's my concern, because then I'm hearing about it nonstop. So how do we deal with that?
This is my advice for a development permit. You wanna set it up robust enough that you're trying to mitigate an issue, whether it be trying to avoid a hazard, or trying to protect the environment, or servicing, or trying to make things look not like an eyesore. You want your guidelines to be robust enough and the process to be robust enough that you're gonna achieve that, but you also have to recognize this is an extra application that someone's going to go through. They're gonna pay a fee. There's extra requirements. So you want to achieve your goals without being too onerous on applicants. So that's the line I try to walk when creating a development permit area, if that makes sense.
So we're, like I said, we're moving in a direction that's better, in terms of clarity, and it's just a matter of, we still have a few questions that are to get answered. And I only have one more, and then we're actually done the OCP.
But for the APC, is there any questions about development permit areas?
Where would we put in something that would prevent excessive light pollution?
Light pollution?
Light pollution, it sounds like a benign.
No.
It's horrible.
I would-
Subject to it.
I would include that, in your, so our form and character for commercial industrial, that's where I would include that as a guideline. Just having like dark sky, because there's lots of information about dark sky guidelines and shielding to make sure the light is going down and not out. And height of light, so you're hitting your parking lot and not spilling over into another property. So those would all be, I think, well in the realm of guidelines you could put into a form and character for industrial and commercial uses.
Well, no, I'm not.
Or are you thinking
the-
residential, RC? It's a bit trickier because you can't put that form and character, DPs can't apply to single residential.
Mhm.
So I would put,
We had that problem in Paris.
you could put it as just a general policy, but how would you enforce it?
Yeah, well, I guess with the advent of very cheap lighting,
Yeah.
like cheap to operate lighting, LEDs,
Yeah,
incredible power to them with very little cost to operate,
yeah,
and the light spillage is just insane.
yeah.
So I'm just throwing it out
You
there.
could have a development partly.
Easy issue to tackle for larger scale developments, and
Would be
the
under-
best way for single family nuisance, I think.
bylaw. That's what it would be.
Yeah.
Is that you could have a nuisance bylaw. Ooh,
Kelly.
what? Don't bang it.
It's from here from the meadows, Andy.
No, they had bees there, not wasps.
So that's a,
Oh, no, I was in an airplane once, flying out of Cascar, and we always had bees like that. Dad would always mom and dad always did. So we're in the plane in Castlegar, and a wasp flies into the plane. And it's flying around, everybody's going nuts, right? So I reach into my little bag thing, and I had a plastic bag, a laundry bag. And I stood up, picked up the bag, the wasp flew into the bag, I closed the thing, gave it to the stewardess, took it outside, let the bee go, everyone's clapping. Big bee.
Okay, so we don't,
No, it's not a 10,000.
Yeah, open the windows.
anyway, so we don't have anything really for nuisance and stuff like that.
For houses, yeah, that's a trickier one. For commercial, I would say I got you, but house is harder.
Nuisance, it's nuisance.
Nuisance.
No, I realize that.
It's
but-
nuisance.
But it's not really.
And that's comes under zoning.
Yeah, like you could have a policy to say like abide by dark sky or something, but like it would just be a policy. I don't see how you could enforce it. Yeah.
And I understand there's a difference between
Yeah.
industrial.
Yeah. Only because, yeah, we have that extra tool though.
And this is what
Apply.
I'm getting at, is that you could have an industrial operation. Would that lighting be covered under the form and character?
Yeah.
It could be.
Because it's form and character. how it looks. Lighting, signage, landscaping, massing,
Well, we have to do some-
building
we have to do
materials.
some heavy duty work to get some people to put some shielding on, like. that.
Yeah.
So I've been, see,
DPs aren't retroactive though.
I know, each one of these is an experience that I've gone through.
They'd have to propose a new building or
Neighbors begging for
an
some-
addition or something that would trigger a new DP.
finally we get voluntary compliance after scores of meetings. Please. Are you being, see, it all goes back. Everything in here goes back to that neighbor-friendly development. And if you apply, it's almost like a golden rule of development. If your development is neighbor-friendly, no matter what it is, and or your land use is neighbor-friendly, never mind development, then we're good. But not everybody cares about that. And the problems we have and the staffing that ratepayers pay for, incredible amounts of money are spent on addressing non-neighbor friendly land use. Like growing pumpkins. Growing what?
Talk to you later.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying, it's like, it's just like, it's, you think about it. So it's almost like it should be like, every page should have like here, the watermark should be, you know.
Turmeric.
Neighbor friendly, Area I's neighbor friendly land use zone, you know, it should be on every page.
So it's,
Watermark, there you go.
it's 8. I think we can finish this.
Yeah.
Any other questions about development permits? I don't wanna go through it too fast if there's questions or,
Nope.
oh, you're okay? Okay, so the next section is temporary use permits. Now, these are tools, you can think of them as zoning, a zoning changes for is long-term. A temporary use permit is kind of an interim thing. So for if someone wants to bring in a use on a temporary basis that's not aligned with the zoning bylaw, they can apply for a temporary use permit. They're allowed to be for a period of 3 years. And they do have the teeth that Andy is talking about, where you can control things like hours of operation, the siting, waste management, even you can even take security to make sure the use stops and the land gets reclaimed when their time is up. They can go for up to 3 years, but they can go for less. Now, these have to come to the board for a decision like a rezoning would. They don't go for multiple readings like a bylaw would, because you're not passing a bylaw, it's a permit. But they do have a public consultation phase as part of it as well. So kind of like a public hearing.
That goes to the board, it doesn't go to APHC?
It's referred to.
It'll be referred to you, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be referred to you.
You, like development permits, the board delegated that to staff.
Okay.
That's how that happened.
Yeah.
We can undelegate
I
it.
just heard board and I got scared.
That they'd skip you. No, temporary use permits would come,
Permits at the APC.
yeah, because they either meet the
they've
guidelines
been
or they
delegated.
don't. Yeah. And temporary use permits are a board process and with a public, kind of like a public hearing, but not so formal. And they would come to the APHC for a review.
So these,
So,
oh, sorry, when you're done. She's waiting.
okay.
for you.
So this is Andy's thing. In the previous, so in your old official community
Current.
plan,
Permit.
okay, I'm calling it old. It's
In the current official thing.
no, it's like it's on its way out. It's old. So in your current official community plan, you abide by old local government rules where temporary use permits used to only be allowed in commercial or industrial lands. 5, 6 years ago, the province changed the local government act where it could be for, you're not restricted to industrial or commercial anymore. You could apply for a TUP for any lands, any use. It still has the scrutiny of going through the APHC and going to the board, but you're not limited to only lands that are commercial or industrial. And so a couple of years ago, I brought that update forward and other OCPs were updated. And Area I and J was not because of a board decision.
Or E doesn't have them.
He doesn't have zoning, so,
Doesn't have zoning.
so it's a moot point.
Yeah.
Cause they'll never see a permit. And so with the new OCP, I've brought you up to the new language, allowing it anywhere. You still have the right to say yes or no. It's just, you have the option. If you revert back to the old way of doing it, no one could ever come to you for a TUP on residential. And I'll give you an example and then I'll let Andy say his piece because I know he's bursting.
Getting rosy too.
Here's an example that I dealt with this week. Is someone wants to build a garage on their property before their house. Now, a garage is an accessory use. You can't have it unless you have a principal use of a house. In other areas, that's kind of been tackled by them applying for a temporary use permit. And we say, okay, you can have your garage first for a period of 2 years, then you have to build your house. Well, for whatever period you want, under 3 years. If you don't,
Be renewed for another 3 years.
if you don't, we're gonna take security and tear the garage down and go back to vacant land. Cause we don't wanna see, we can understand irrational, some people wanting to build, sometimes they say, we want the garage first so we can put the tools in to build the house. So we can say, okay, I can kind of see that, but we don't want the situation where there's just a garage and never that residential use because it's a residential property. So they apply for a TUP. Someone applied for that in Area J, and we had to say no because we don't accept TUPs on residential lands in this area. If you were in another area, yes, but not this area, no. Okay, I've said what I need to say.
So we have never torn down anything that goes in or removed it, regardless of the years. And the cost of removing something, if somebody doesn't care, again, not neighbor friendly, my garage is there. What are you gonna do about it? I got it for 3 years. Now I got a renewal for 3 years. And now I'm gonna completely ignore the regional district. And then we gotta go in and tear down a garage. You know what the cost is? And the legal part? It's $100,000 bill. And that bill gets placed on the taxes owing. The province pays us. That's when the property sells. Now, if the property doesn't sell, you get how this works. So this can be abused in ways that are not imaginary, that are real. So we have granted TUPs for commercial and industrial operations that have gone through the process, APHC, the board. So in Area I, yes, we've provided this. And what happened is that for directors who haven't been around, oh yeah, this sounds like a real good deal until there's a problem. And you talked about enforcement and you went to a workshop and you learned something. Enforcement is a nightmare. Bylaw enforcement is a nightmare. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that it's super, super expensive. One case could cost us $100,000.
Except that money is eventually recovered through a lien that's on the.
When the property sells.
When the property sells, yeah.
And Kelly, telling you right now, we've got things that we've done in other areas where we've had to go in and clean up and do things. You're waiting for that money for a long time, but what happens is the bills have to be paid. And that only comes through rural administration taxation.
It doesn't come from the province?
No.
Remuneration? No.
It comes from rural administration taxation up front, and then we wait for the province to pay us. So the problem with TUPs is that when they go south, it can get really expensive.
But it could go, that rationale, it could go south for commercial or industrial property.
What happens with commercial and industrial properties, we tend to be way more stringent.
You are the decision maker. You can be super stringent with the residential ones.
So what we did in Area I and J is that we agreed that we only want temporary and industrial. When some other area says, no, yeah, we want the whole enchilada. So we limited what TUPs can be used for. So I think you know where I'm leaning towards. I'm leaning towards industrial and commercial, full stop. Because they're rare. And for example, they can be, they're very rare. And we take them deadly seriously. 1 year, not 3 year. You get what I'm saying. It's like we've really looked at these and said, these are really stringent. Now, I've had this conversation with staff ever since this started. And then when I saw this in the draft, I says, okay, well, when we get to this meeting, I'm going to explain why I have a concern about this. And we don't get a lot, we haven't had any TUP requests in Area I.
Because they're truly are intended for something that's temporary. If it's gonna be permanent, then we would direct you to rezone.
So, but we have had applications in INJ for temporary and commercial, temporary use, which we have approved. So it's not that we don't approve, we just go through really, really tight process. So that's my 2 bits.
I thought we just went through a temporary type exercise in Glade,
In for acres,
so in Glade, under the Dennison property.
they tried,
Yes. And it was rejected, but it eventually was withdrawn.
it was withdrawn.
Yeah.
But we did go through it on the they applied for TUP in Sure Acres for that trailer. And that tore the community in half. Now, the rules have changed on secondary residence. That was a TUP application that went in. That was a TUP application that went in before we implemented TUP into Area I and J zone. And should never have been brought forward. But it tore the community in half.
Which trailers up? Which?
There was a trailer that was being rented out not for a family member. It was for a young
Oh, I
family.
see. Okay.
And so basically they applied for a TUP.
Oh,
To give the family time to move.
Okay.
But then they couldn't because you didn't have residential TUPs.
okay.
So there was a TUP application that really tore the community in half. So all I'm saying, and that was for residential use. Now, the province has brought in its rules. So I have no problem with rules applying equally to everybody. And if a landowner is following the rules and the rules apply equally to everybody, I have no problem with that. But when that's not the case, and we got a real bad taste in our mouths about it, TUP for residential use and purposes going absolutely south and ripping a community in half. That's what we had to deal with. And the vile emails that flowed were horrendous over this. TUP for residential use.
But I think that's actually a good example. You have the ability as the APC and then as the board to say no, or say yes or say no, and have conditions. So I guess my argument would be, why shut the door to an option? Maybe one day there's a residential
But Donna, what
TUP.
happened-
Let me finish. Maybe one day there's a residential TUP that you would support, but we have to say, I can't even accept this application.
What ended up happening is that was a blatant attempt of abuse of a TUP provision that was on speculation that it would be coming into place. So if one landowner can think of that, there will be other things that will come up. It just left such a, and you guys, you know this.
They're still,
Still bad blood,
Across the
still
road.
bad blood, name calling, I have people that will never speak to me again in my life over this. Over a TUP application. So my leaning is towards industrial and commercial, but I leave it up to the APHC.
Well, if you don't want things trouble, that's the way it's gonna
I'm
be.
just telling you that this is, you know where we're at.
I think it was probably even more complicated than here.
Well, I didn't wanna get into more,
But I just, there was a little bit of, the TUP was an attempt to cover up.
violation of the zoning
Violation,
bylaws.
Yeah. Blatant, but
And
That's it.
That's it,
is that it?
we're finished.
No,
Nope,
what do you
you,
wanna do?
you can leave it the way I've written it, or you can take it back to the way it was. That's for your discussion. You've heard both sides of the argument.
Oh, no, that's.
So, did somebody drop the ball when reviewing the application? Like, I'm just saying if it's in there and if it goes
It
through a
wasn't,
process.
wasn't in there.
Oh, it wasn't in
This,
there.
okay, this specific application that Director Dayoff is talking about, because all the TUPs were being amended, it was assumed, well, and it shouldn't have been, but it was assumed that when those bylaws are changed, you can submit your TUP. And so in any other area, that would have been the case, but it wasn't the case in Area I, because that bylaw didn't pass.
Okay.
So that application had to be returned and it wasn't processed. Yeah,
But it was processed,
it was started.
started.
But it wasn't
And then
finished.
we're going to public hearing.
So leaving it in then, following the current and future process shouldn't be an issue.
So
Oh, yes, it
if
can
it-
still be.
It can, okay.
if it's
At
in,
least in the
if it's in, any property can apply for a TUP and it'll go through the review process.
Mhm.
If it goes back to the old one, only properties on this map that we've designated commercial or industrial have that opportunity. So it's a choice.
It was work for us for 40 years to have it that way. And I don't want to see it change. That's my opinion.
Well, just, my opinion, just leave it the way it was and go ahead and hope it never happens again. You want, Robin?
I don't know. Sorry.
You want-
Not the way the whopping we got that last. Why does it have to happen for acres endlessly? I don't know, but it does.
Well, Sharikis is in Area I, so
I know.
where
I
else are
know.
we gonna go?
And you have a good, example of leaving it in to support like a residential temporary use?
Okay, well, I can tell you the reason why the province made the change.
Okay.
Maybe that wouldn't be the most appropriate in a rural area, but this is why, is the province made the change and so modulars could be put down for temporary housing. That's why that change was made. It's not saying that that's what we'd want to see in Area I, or that if the application came, that would be an appropriate land use that we'd want to see, but that's the reason why it was broadened. But yeah, for the regional district, most of the residential TUPs are usually to allow a garage before a house. I'm just trying to think of another example that I've seen.
That's it.
In other communities, I've seen it for other reasons, but in RDCK, I think that's the only thing so far.
I'm just saying it takes a really creative mind to come up with a process. And what we saw was an attempt to, because of a complaint filed, that our zoning wasn't being followed. And people were taking advantage of a situation that other people were not allowed to do. And then basically what ended up happening is that, yeah, you can continue doing this violation of our current zoning bylaws by applying for a TUP. And I go, what? And other people were livid. neighbors were livid, saying the rules apply, why don't the rules apply equally to everybody?
I mean, yeah, we don't need to dig, that's just one example, but that is you're evicting people. It's not, no matter which way it was gonna go, it was never gonna go.
Anyway, I am not in favor. I'm gonna stand as I am not in favor of temporary use permits
At all?
at all. In residential areas, and especially around building the garage. Because I've also seen that on the other side of that, where a person builds a garage so they can live in it. And lo and behold, it becomes the carriage house and the mortgage helper and all these other things, so it. And apparently Bill 44 is gonna make this all wonderful here.
No worries, now
There's
it's
gonna
a carriage house.
I'm not
Mhm.
worried about only going commercial and industrial if we decide to go that way. Because Bill 44 is giving people across the province all kinds of opportunities, subject to servicing, right? To do a whole bunch of things that they couldn't do before. So there's lots of flexibility to do all kinds of stuff. And that's why it doesn't bother me that we go commercial and industrial only, but I would like to see it there for commercial and industrial. Because in the past, situations have come up where we actually needed it for community purposes. So that's the piece that, that's my suggestion, respectful suggestion, is that Bill 44 gives everybody now in the province the right to do anything they want in terms of secondary residences and carriage houses and subject to servicing, right? We can do all of that. We were a leader. Some would say we weren't a leader, but we were a leader in areas I and J, because it was the first place that allowed a mobile home for a family member. Nobody else had that. And that's where our parents and grandparents went. That's why we brought that in. And that's on the books and has been for 40 years. Other areas did not have that at all. So we have been progressive. We have, before this new legislation came in, we're way ahead of the curve. And some people will say, well, we actually allowed something to happen. The only rule there was when the family members finished with the mobile home, remove it from the home.
Yes. We were progressive with limitations.
With rules. And people followed the rules and some people didn't follow the rules. And it was complaint driven. So what happened is that some people, rent the thing out for 10 years, no problem. And then someone else tries to do it and a neighbor files a complaint and they got to remove it. But these guys, oh, we're going to file for a TUP. Keep it going.
Well, in Glade, it happened, he built himself a big garage before he put the mobile home on. You know, the garage was first and after a while he put
Put a
a
mobile
home on.
for family member.
Marcy, most of the TUPs I process are usually commercial for a food truck.
Yeah.
Or industrial for processing activities to happen at a quarry. Those are the most common ones
And we control those very tightly.
just trying to think of examples for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
You don't even want to go commercial and industrial? You
No,
want to,
commercial and industrial.
so you're good, okay.
What I'm saying is I'm not interested.
In this.
In this story,
Yeah.
Dana.
Right.
Sorry.
Well,
Where are you at?
Yeah, it's fine.
It doesn't affect me as much as some of the other areas.
No, but you're advising on this is, applies to all of the area.
I would say it's commercial. I mean, the problem, I'm not gonna face it. I'm sitting here listening to you people talk about it, so I'm thinking, well, that's just not gonna happen at Bass Creek that I can see. Well, there's gonna be a lot of changes though with this. A lot. I mean, just listen to the news. They don't have any idea what's going on. Just everybody all of a sudden is gonna be subdividing or
No, that's
taking a
not-
room in their house and calling it an apartment, and it's just gonna go. It's too many people.
Our building permit department is gonna go insane. 'Cause-
They're gonna be busy up.
Andy, where are you at?
I don't know. I'd leave it the way it was. you know, one problem out of so many, so we dealt with it and still
How
deal
about
with
you
it.
guys?
And guests, advisor.
Lisa,
I see, I don't know.
I know,
Hey,
it's
it
kind of,
is.
it's the,
Well, I'm with Brian.
You gotta think,
Yeah, for us, it's.
whenever you try to think about it, you know, it's just,
I guess because we've been hit so,
except when they
Right.
get-
we've been battered by this. It just
Yeah, no, I mean,
it
I
hurts.
can't think of myself ever needing this for myself, but I mean, if there's a path, if there is a resident that wants to do something, there is a different process they can go through, but not a temporary use, or it's just the big no,
They'll have to do a rezoning.
a rezoning.
permanent
So,
zoning.
okay, so there is a different path.
Oh, there's a bit different path.
Yeah, so,
If you want.
yeah. I don't know. And this is a fluid document we keep getting reminded of, right? So, it can be changed if there's a big need down the road, I
There's
suppose.
always someone out there though that's looking to beat the system,
No way.
somehow get around it.
I think
So
so.
no matter how you word it, someone will say, well, I didn't interpret it that way.
Yeah.
Probably have to let
Chilies.
each one
I
stand
know,
on its
I'm
own.
kind of, I could see both, I could, you know, then eliminate the chance of the ones that try to,
Well, to me, I think, I mean, I still like that idea of the, mobile home for family members, like Candy said, you know, that to me was kind of almost a security blanket that, you know, when
mm,
I'm no longer able to maintain my big house, I can move into a trailer and my, you know, whatever.
Kids move.
I think to me that's important.
that's honestly
So is
where I
that
keep
gone,
going.
Donna?
But that's not temporary use.
No, I
Yeah.
understand that,
Oh.
but I mean, to me, but then once,
But it
like,
was a temporary use, because what happened, it was as long as the family member.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
It
Oh,
was a team.
Yeah.
Did that. right?
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way,
It really.
and I don't
was
have the
used.
original documentation, but somewhere along the way, that, mobile home turned into a manufactured home. And there were specifications on
I
size.
mean, a modular.
Modular,
Yeah, it
sorry.
did.
And there were specific sizes and specific addition sizes. And now it's been blown out of the water. You could put a mobile mansion on it, the house, on the property if you want.
Now it'll be restricted to 90 square meters, 969 square feet.
What's 90 square meters?
So, okay, so your existing zoning is, I can have a house, I can have a suite in that house, anyone can rent my suite, but I can have a mobile home in addition only for a family member. No size limit. The change with Bill 44 is I can have my house, I can have a suite. If I'm over a hectare, instead of a suite, I can choose a detached, you can call it a cottage, carriage house, garden suite, whatever you'd like, limited to 90 square meters. My family can go in it, but also someone else could. I could rent it to anyone. We all drink the same amount of water. We all go to the bathroom the same amount if you're related.
Mhm.
It's the same like with garage. In the cities, taking all these garages and just changing them into little houses.
So yeah, you
Huge.
can't restrict the who anymore.
Right, check it out.
So basically, this Bill 44 is gonna be more dominant. That's gonna be the provincial.
That's the law.
That's the law. So
It
basically,
trumps our zoning or OCP.
that's right. Okay, so basically, the temporary use then is in a way obsolete.
Thank you.
Just for everyone's
For residential.
reference,
Yeah.
90 square meters is
169,
69 square feet,
very big.
which is a 14 by 70 modular.
So a single wide, but not a double.
Unlike what we just saw here.
And now, exactly, now we have
Yeah.
double wides that are.
So we don't restrict the accessory dwelling unit to its form, so it could be a mobile home, but we do restrict its size, so it would be a single wide, not a double
And
wide.
it could be a tiny home.
Well, they're.
if it meets building permit.
If it meets the building permits. That's the thing with the tiny home, it's gotta meet the building permit.
Yeah. So that has to be on a foundation and service, not on wheels.
Service is more, is the important thing.
Yeah. No composting toilet.
Okay, so that, all of those things have been included in there already.
Yeah. Yeah, tiny homes on wheels are considered an RV and you can't live in them. If you want a tiny home, usually people's mind go to that homemade RV kind of model. But if you want just a very small dwelling, sure. But yeah, permanent foundation, meet the BC building code, service it properly. Usually where the tiny houses fall down is their hallways are too narrow and the loft to the bedroom is usually a ladder to a bedroom and that doesn't meet BC building code. So it's usually the foundation, the width and
Many of the, like mobile homes, they're put on piers or they're just put on pads.
okay, they still get a building permit to put to actually, because the mobile home has its certification. And then putting it on the pad is what requires the building permit. So the building inspector will look that it has the proper skirting or whatever, and then they'll make sure that the certification is there.
Okay.
So they still need a building permit, but it's just more of a quick exercise for the building inspector because they're only inspecting the pad.
We left the best for last, TUPs, and went, oh my God, it's the last thing we're gonna talk about, right? So that's it. So I think you've heard where we're at right now.
Sounds like keep it the old way.
Yeah, because as I say, the Bill 44, like you said,
44 allows everything.
well, exactly. So we have to
And
do.
it just like, and you know what? We could change it in the future. When the zoning comes around, we could review it, all kinds of stuff, but it's, as an overarching statement, I know that it's.
Okay, and then the last couple pages shouldn't be anything too crazy, but just so you know, the next section, integration of plans, studies, policies, and bylaws, just kind of outlines what the next steps are in order to implement the OCP. Okay, great, we have this policy document. What do we need to do to give it teeth and life? And so there's a list there. The next section is monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. So what will we look at to see if the OCP, if what's happening on the ground is meeting our OCP policies or not? And then the last section is just some policies around plan amendment and review. So periodic assessment, we have to look at it every 5 years for housing. Just kind of, there's a list there. And then the last section is a glossary. Consider that in progress, I'll be adding a lot more terms to it.
They need actually.
So it's kind of like an index.
Yeah, and Dan and I went through the whole OCP and identified a whole bunch of items that should be included in the glossary.
Okay,
Yeah.
super.
So we did that work.
Yeah, one thing, so kind of an example would be, instead of just referencing the Shore Acres study, we'll put the study in the glossary so you, the link or whatever, so you can access it and reference that, or the director of aggregate, like we were talking about earlier today.
Good service recommendation.
So if a document's referenced in here, we'll reference how to find it in the glossary, so it's not just a title.
On the mapping, are you gonna, that's all gonna be part of the OCP.
All the mapping, yep.
And then again, once we go through the public meeting, now, the next thing after this, we're done now. Our work here, going through this draft is done. That's a lot of hard work, thank you. And I think, hopefully, you learned a little bit more about how land use planning is done. We are the beneficiaries of the people that went before us. Area I was one of the first to have zoning in the RDCK. And right now we have many areas in the RDCK that have no official community plan and no zoning.
It's 8:33, but could I take a couple minutes to just tell you about what will happen next?
Yeah. So what happens next?
John Wicken was in there when we started.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So the next step, I will make all these changes and email the draft back to you. The next step would be the referral. So that's a 30-day period where we send to external agencies, internal departments, and the public. I'll couple that with a public event. And also part of that would be the formal APC review. So I'll make all your edits, but you have the chance to formally review it like you do with an application. And also when you review it, sometimes or always the case is when we do the public referral, lots of times people will say, oh, my property is rural residential, but I think it should be commercial. And so my job is to compile all of those. I'll bring them back to you and we'll discuss whether or not the map should be amended. So that will be happening at the referral stage too. Once we're happy with that, because once I get all these comments, we're going to be making more amendments. I can't see a situation where I wouldn't make any more amendments after the referral stage. Once those comments are implemented and it's gone to the APC, now we're ready to go to the board. So it goes to the board for first and second reading. They must consider the financial plan and the waste management plan. Then it has to go to the ALC. Then I put out notice and it goes to a public hearing. And then if comments come back from the public hearing, if we need to make changes, we'll do so at that time. And if we need to make changes, then we'll have to reread the bylaw and have another public hearing. And then, so for example, the last OCP Area G ended up having 2 public hearings, and that's normal. Hopefully you've captured most of the comments through the referral stage, but you might get more during the public hearing. And then once you're done that and you're happy, third final adoption, done.
And we're gonna be done before your babies do, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna be done.
No, my question is, her third baby, how old is comment number 2 going to be when this is done?
So 30 days referral means that if I boogied, 30-day referral means if I boogied and there was no major changes that came out of the referral process, I could get you on the June agenda. If there were bigger changes, July for sure. So June the earliest, July the latest is when I could go for first reading. And then public hearing, you have to put 2 ads in the paper, so add usually 3 or so weeks there, a week in advance to get the deadline of the paper, 2 weeks for the paper ads, then your public hearing. So the best case scenario I'd say is a June or July meeting and then a late summer public hearing. So I could get you to public hearing before I go on mat leave, and then probably someone else will have to do final. But the bulk of the work's at the beginning, so yeah.
If we could get to a public hearing or a public meeting with you,
There's a public meeting and then there's a public hearing. They're 2 different things.
get you through at least some of the public interaction.
So would there just be the one for the whole area, one meeting?
We haven't decided that yet.
Okay.
We haven't
Staff wants
decided.
to have 1 meeting here.
Uh-huh.
It's hard to have you want to have a public meeting, but it's hard, this is, you know how we sat down and go, how do you do that in a public process? So I'm thinking like a public meeting supplemented by me setting aside office hours, a couple hours every day where someone can come and we can go through it and give comments, because it's really hard in a public setting to give such detailed comments. So I haven't set it in stone yet, but it might be something like that.
The other thing for each area, really there's very little language for each area. So then that was the benefit of going to each area, was to talk about, is the Sherika language accurate? Is the Pass Creek language accurate? And the way we've set all this up, it's more of a holistic document. And then what happens is that there are some things specific to each area, but most things are, like the Brilliant thing would be something that would be more fleshed out a lot more. But the other ones are pretty much generic. They're very similar.
I just found, I had very positive feedback from our Storms meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Very positive. People wanted to be engaged and we had a good turnout. Yeah. And maybe it was because we were the last and there was a lot of discussion, I guess, in the community, but I mean, so
All the public meetings were,
Oh, yeah, well,
in every community was,
oh, yeah, well,
in every community was, yeah, it was well, Pat Marcy,
Mhm.
you know,
yeah,
Pat.
well, as I say, so I think that opportunity is to get the community engaged and to people to be aware. I think it would be nice if we could have one at every.
No, but
Oh, the big one.
I mean, that's just,
I mean, it's not decided yet.
yeah, well, anyway, that's just my feedback.
But we have done some and staff and we've done some heavy lifting. I think we've done the bulk of the heavy lifting. Now it's tweaking, not heavy lifting. And a process that started in 2016. You know, here we are in 2024. That's 8 years. So that's how long I've been on this. And the APC.
Is there too.
And this is, actually, we've been on it since the mid-90s. So just,
Time for you folks to start again.
so just,
What do you mean, you folks?
these things,
We'll make the, we'll make this part of the next time.
what was that? Oh, next round,
Yeah.
oh, God.
Andy made it.
I know, maybe this Andy, not this Andy, I'll tell you, I got, but there is a plan, there's a suggestion that we go to one kind of, generic plan for all the electoral areas, and then just split out the specifics for each electoral area. And Cowichan is doing this right now. And we learned from our meeting with the Cowichan people what to avoid. And the one thing that they said to us, as you're going through this process, you should be doing the zoning at the same time. That's what they told us, the Cowichan people told us, because that's what we did in the mid-90s. We did the zoning and the overarching policies at the same time. Here, we're gonna get the policy through, and then we've got to do all the zoning, which is another whole huge process. So it's kind of half the work done. Maybe then I figure, well, 2028 or so, we should have the zoning finished.
Eat healthy, man.
So I remember Lisa and Marcy and Eileen asking, how long am I signing on for?
You
Could
told
be
me 6 months.
6
Yeah.
months.
Boy, you should just come to a meeting.
Yeah.
And Brian's never,
Oh, I'd say 35. Yeah, okay, John, that sounds good.
no, I
Then
shared,
got Crawford.
this guy here, same thing.
Jim Crawford, I said, oh, we're gonna have to see him try.
We're gonna try, yeah. So I just wanna say, how much I respect your commitment, your patience, and it's.
We'll lock up, Bill.
Oh, that's Bill?
Uh-huh.
And how much,
It is out.
I appreciate all of you. At the end of the process, we are going to have a dinner.
Are you sure?
Oh, yeah.
Barbecue it is.
Write it down, write it
Going
down.
to barbecue at our
Write it
house.
down.
Hot dog.
No. 4 years. No, I'm serious. Like this is something that, that we have to do. I don't care if I have to provide a grant to do it or whatever way it's done. We do have some APC money, not huge money, but the key thing is that this will be done and we'll do it upright. And, but
Freddie
it's.
Boje evening.
Yeah, Freddie Boje.
Freddie Boje,
God bless him.
autograph him, man. So,
Good times.
so basically, we have reached a milestone in our work. And thank you, Dana, and thank you, Stephanie, and go back to Miri Durant, who's now at the city.
Yeah.
I mean, and please pass on our thanks to all the staff on reaching this milestone. I know you're gonna go back. And I told Sangeet and I had a real good chat And I said,
You're gonna tell Sangita that we finished.
no,
today.
but here's what I
Trouble.
told Sangita. I says, Dana's pregnancy has been the catalyst for us to finish our work. And I told Dana, I promised, this is 2 more meetings, right? We're done.
Yeah, you did.
And she was just laughing. She said she doesn't think it's possible
Beat
for
baby.
us to be done. No, this part of the work. No, this is done.
Yep.
And so please go back and say, Andy kept his promise.
Confirmation.
I've never seen Dana's smile so big and bright.
Right now, I go get you a fireball from the trunk.
So more ecstatic when Brian says meeting adjourned.
Well, I'm waiting to schedule the next meeting.
Yeah, where are we going?
I don't think we need to schedule one
We don't need to
now
schedule
because
We have
we'll wait until the referral.
happening
We're
here
gonna wait till that.
Monday
She
and
will-
Tuesday.
she will let
which
us know.
You're welcome to attend. One is the Kolesnikov office building, public hearing. That happens here on Tuesday. And then on Monday is the Terry's Elementary School site, public hearing, rezoning. Here. The reason is, we need to have the
Internet.
internet capability. Otherwise, they won't be in the Terry's. So I'll be chairing both those meetings, one on Monday, one on Tuesday, so you're starting 7, I think, they made those.
That'd be good times.
I think it's 7.
Is it gonna be down here?
Would you please send me that, like a notice for both of those meetings? Cause I was.
The notices just came out. They are just gonna be in the published in the Castlegar News.
I mean, I'm gonna put it on.
Oh, yeah, no.
This can be-
But they would also be under upcoming events.
No, I'll email them all.
Please, yeah, thanks.
They were gonna adjourn the
Just
meeting.
wait, just wait a second.
Oh.
And
I second it.
I just wanna make sure I'm telling you the right
Sorry,
time.
Andy, went over.
Public hearing. I got 6:30 for both, but I got a funny feeling the notices say 7. I will email them.
And this was, when did you say this one?
There's Monday and Tuesday.
Monday and Tuesday.
Everything I have in my book for a whole year is this. Like for all the RD's meetings, right? Cause it just worked for us for a long time.
We started at 6, we would have been done at 8:30. All right.
No, you have to finish today.
No
We're
shade.
done.
We're good.
Okay, so thank you, Dana. So
Yeah, thank you.
we